Narrator explains that losing heroines exist solely to support the main couple's love story, adding that their own love is always destined to end in defeat. The narrator passionately declares that a happy waifu makes a happy otaku, insisting that even if defeat is guaranteed, the absolute last thing they ever want to see is their queen crying. Watching a silver-haired girl named Sei, a boy makes a solemn vow to change the story so she will not be unhappy. He bursts into the room holding a bouquet upside down, and loudly declares his love to a blushing Sei, leaving everyone else completely stunned. A boy named Hisamura finishes his shift at a karaoke place, tells his boss he is leaving, and rushes off down the street. While sprinting, he pants heavily and thinks about how he has waited a very long time for today. Standing in front of an anime store, he reflects on his huge crush on a girl with short silver hair who cares about others despite her slightly cold demeanor, before finally finding what he was looking for. He looks excitedly at the new merchandise he bought, explaining that the girl is Haitteshimatta from the currently popular rom-com manga Ajajama. He explains the manga's premise, which starts with the protagonist, Yuichi, falling in love with Shiho, only for his wealthy childhood friend Kaori to constantly interfere using her family's power, creating a popular and highly praised love triangle. He notes that classic rom-coms always feature side girls who accompany the main heroines, and one of those side girls happens to be his waifu. He introduces her as Haitteshimatta, a close friend and wingwoman to the main girl, who secretly harbors a crush on the protagonist, cementing her status as the common losing heroine. Walking alone with his bag, he muses that while most readers support a main heroine and eagerly wait to see who wins, he feels entirely differently. He happily admires his new rubber strap, but quickly shoves it back into his pocket to hide his otaku side when another person walks by. While daydreaming about needing to work more hours to afford all the new, is walking along the sidewalk when a massive truck suddenly swerves directly toward him. As the vehicle barrels closer, time seems to slow down, and he desperately wonders if the driver is asleep and if he is about to die. Panicking, he realizes he does not want to die yet, because he is only a high school student with so much left to explore. Most of all, he is devastated that he will not get to see the ending of his favorite romantic comedy manga, to witness his beloved Sei's story to the very end, before the truck violently crashes into him. He wakes up disoriented in an unfamiliar place with a heavy feeling in his head, looking at his blurry reflection in a nearby window and wondering what is happening. Looking down the hallway, he tries to figure out where he is and realizes the surroundings look exactly like a school. He quickly notices that this is not his school and that he is wearing a completely different uniform. A sudden shudder runs through him as he remembers getting hit by a truck just moments ago. Trying to calm himself down, he wonders if he has fallen into a coma and is currently dreaming. Suddenly, he hears familiar voices nearby mentioning Sei and Shiho. He is stunned to see Shiho Fuji's and Haitteshimatta from his favorite series right before his eyes, recognizing their voices from the drama CDs, as Shiho worries about being a nuisance to Yuichi. He is overjoyed to witness this exact scene in person, recognizing it as the moment Shiho hesitates to go on a date with Yuichi, while Sei encourages her to focus on her own feelings. He recalls the plot of the manga where Shiho considers rejecting Yuichi because of his popular childhood friend Kaori Tajoin, only for Sei to actively push her to follow her heart. Sei reassures Shiho that she definitely has a chance since Yuichi invited her out, prompting a grateful Shiho to thank her and run off happily, while he quickly hides behind a pillar. Left alone, Sei quietly whispers for Shiho to give it her all alongside her own unspoken feelings, which he overhears with a gasp. He tears up in his hiding spot, deeply moved by witnessing the exact self-sacrificing interlude that originally made him fall in love with Sei. He reflects on how Sei developed feelings for Yuichi over time, but decided to step aside once she realized her close friend, Shiho, was in love with him too. He remembers how Sei chose to become their wingwoman and bury her own feelings out of sincerity to her friend. But his thoughts are interrupted when he accidentally slips and makes a noise against the wall. The The noise alerts Sei, who looks around the corner, spots him sitting on the floor, and asks if he heard their conversation calling him by the name Hisamura. He panics at having his favorite character stand right in front of him, and quickly apologizes for eavesdropping, but is left confused as to why his mouth spoke on its own, and why she addressed him as Hisamura. Though he is thrilled that she called his name, he realizes that his automatic apology matches a character's dialogue from the original story, making him suspect something deeper is going on. He realizes he has somehow become Tsukasa Hisamura, the protagonist's best friend, who is his exact name. Though he assumes it is a dream, he feels incredibly lucky to have a front row seat to his favorite scene, and have his favorite girl call his name. His mouth moves automatically once again, as he asks Sei if she is truly fine with this, since she is also in love with Yuichi, while Sei sadly smiles and insists that this is for the best. He looks at her gentle, considerate smile, and feels a wave of sorrow, knowing determined to prevent her from ever showing a sad smile again. Hisamura decides to completely overturn the tragic story of the losing heroine by looking directly at Sei and confessing his love, asking her to go out with him. They both stand in stunned silence as he reflects on how the ultimate dream of an otaku is simply to secure the absolute happiness of their favorite character. Sei reacts with utter shock and confusion, struggling to comprehend his sudden proposal to go out together. He immediately begins listing all the traits he loves about her, praising her short silver hair, her cool demeanor, and her deep kindness toward her friends, while she frantically asks what he is talking about. Blushing deeply and hiding her face, she asks him to wait and points out that he has never addressed her by such a familiar nickname before. He is overwhelmed with joy at how cute she is when flustered, thinking to himself that being able to have a normal conversation and confess his feelings feels like an incredible reward. Resolved to speak his mind completely, he steps closer and praises her gentle nature, specifically mentioning how much she cared for her friend by investigating Shiawase. As she trembles and asks if he is trying to make her angry, he continues by stating that her habit of suppressing her own feelings for the sake of her friends is what he admires, yet it also pains him. Looking down with a serious expression, he tells her that he actually does not like seeing her sacrifice her own feelings, calling her by her name once more as she looks up in surprise. He warns her that she will never find true happiness if she continues on this path, causing her to defensively yell back that she does not want to hear such things from him. Stepping forward with absolute certainty, he looks her in the eye and boldly promises that he is going to make her happy. He prepares to repeat his words, clearly leaving her completely dazed and uttering a confused sound. Staring directly at her, he reiterates his confession of love and asks her to go out with him, fully aware that she is supposed to be the tragic, unrequited heroine of the story. He reflects on how the manga is still ongoing and how her feelings are destined to remain unrequited alongside the other main heroines, unless someone intervenes to change her fate. He decides that he does not care about the fate or role of his own character in this narrative, as long as he can prevent her from experiencing heartbreak. She continues to tremble in absolute disbelief at the intensity of his words. When she frantically asks if he is truly serious about dating her, he calmly confirms his devotion, proudly declaring that he would even sacrifice his life for her. As her heart beats rapidly, she backs away in panic, asking if he was always this type of person, and accusing him of trying to scare her, while he counters that she is the one who made him this way. She suddenly loses her balance and trips backward, prompting him to shout a warning to watch out as she falls. The two of them crash to the floor together under a desk in a loud clatter, ending up in a close hold with their hearts pounding wildly. Sei's heart beats rapidly as she stares back at him, completely flustered and starting to stutter. Hisamura's chest thumps just as hard as he gazes directly down into her eyes. He quickly apologizes and thanks her as they sit close together on the bench, while she nervously tells him not to worry about it. He is overwhelmed by their sudden proximity, feeling the warmth of her body, and finding himself captivated by her large round eyes. Believing he is merely dreaming, he decides to be more aggressive and asks her for her direct answer to his confession. He holds on to her as she asks him to let go now that she is all right, prompting him to clarify that he wants an answer to his confession. When she tries to postpone the talk, he gets closer and demands to know immediately, causing her to panic over whether he expects a rejection right now. He declares that he will not let go until she answers, because he would regret it forever if he woke up from the dream without knowing, while she hides her face and laments how difficult he is being. He asks if it is acceptable for him to become her boyfriend, to which a flustered Sei admits that she thinks he is a nice guy and does not rule it out. He presses further by directly asking if she is willing to go out with him and be his girlfriend, leaving her completely overwhelmed. Unable to handle the intensity, she suddenly screams that she is going home and runs out of the room. He sits alone on the classroom floor, blankly watching her empty exit. He stands up and decides he must convey his feelings clearly, so he slams the door open and yells down the hallway after her. He shouts that his love for her will never change even if he returns to the real world, and that he is determined to make her happy, causing her to stop in her tracks. Extremely embarrassed by his loud proclamation, she points back at him and yells to shut up because she will think about his confession. As she runs away, he smiles happily and wiggles with joy, having no regrets because she was incredibly cute. He lifts his bag to head home for the day, but suddenly freezes as a strange realization hits him. He drops his bag in the empty corridor as he wonders when he will wake up from this dream and where he is even supposed to go in this world. A small sketch highlights her complete panic over the sudden confession of love. Haitteshimatta reflects on her past beliefs, recalling how she used to think that traditional romantic love stories in shoujo manga were completely out of reach for her. She returns a book to the shelf, solidifying her past thoughts that those classic romantic stories were meant for someone else. Sitting in her bedroom, she hugs her pillow tightly while blushing intensely, completely lost on what she is supposed to do next. She begins analyzing her own traits, starting with her short hair. As she walks to school, she notes that she is taller than average, while some underclassmen enthusiastically greet her, their hearts fluttering at her cool appearance. While the juniors gush about how different and cool she is compared to the petite, long-haired heroines found in typical manga, her best friend calls out her name. Shiho runs up with a bright smile to greet her, prompting Sei to warmly return the morning greeting to her beautiful best friend. At the school lockers, Shiho leans in to whisper a heartfelt thank you, reiterating that her upcoming date with Haitteshimatta is entirely thanks to Sei's help. Sei gently downplays her role, telling Shiho that the date went well because of her own hard work, though she secretly recalls that her only contribution was looking into Shiho's crush. She remembers how Haitteshimatta was rumored to have a childhood fiancé, which her investigation disproved, and how she simply encouraged Shiho not to back down from her romantic rival. Seeing their mutual feelings as something straight out of a dazzling romance manga, she remains determined to support her best friend's first love in any way possible. Suddenly, Shiho asks if anything happened the day before, causing Sei's heart to leap in panic as her face turns bright red. Shiho points out that her delayed text replies yesterday made it obvious something was wrong, while a flustered Sei apologizes, as she recalls rolling around on her bed in distress over the confession. When Shiho excitedly asks if someone confessed to her, Sei blushes deeply and groans as her friend eagerly demands to hear every detail. Shiho's eyes sparkle with absolute amazement upon learning that the confession came from Haitteshimatta. Shiho mentions she had already noticed them talking frequently, while a mortified Sei struggles to explain that their encounters were supposed to be purely about investigating Haitteshimatta. When asked if she plans to date him, Sei reveals she has not given an answer yet, arguing that she cannot simply agree to a relationship just because he confessed. Shiho asks if she likes someone else instead, which makes Sei look away, as she internally acknowledges her hidden feelings for Haitteshimatta. Although her first thought should have been her old crush Haitteshimatta, suddenly comes to mind instead, prompting her to frantically deny having anyone on her mind before Shiho asks how his confession actually made her feel. Looking down with a soft, blushing smile, she honestly admits that the confession made her feel very happy. Haitteshimatta reflects on how she used to believe love was not for her, but explains that, when Haitteshimatta passionately confessed, it felt like a magical fairy tale that made her deeply happy. She starts screaming internally, as she suddenly remembers his dramatic romantic declaration, blushing furiously at how effortlessly he delivered those cliché lines. Shiho giggles and tells her that taking time to think things over suits her, perfectly making a pouting Sei suspect her friend is teasing her. Shiho happily steps forward, expressing how glad she is to finally discuss romance with her, and announcing her plans to confess on her date, even suggesting they go on a double date if all goes well. Sei is surprised to realize that hearing about Shigemoto from Shiho does not hurt anymore, wondering if her own feelings for him were unconsciously suppressed out of consideration for her friend. She smiles softly and quietly calls Shiho hasty, reflecting on how Haitteshimatta's sudden confession has completely swept her off her feet. The scene shifts to the exterior of an apartment building where the next day begins. Haitteshimatta wakes up in bed with a look of pure shock, realizing to his dismay that he still has not woken up from what he assumed was a dream. He yawns as he walks down the stairs, finding it highly unusual that he did not return to the real world after a full night of sleep, and is still residing in the body of Tsukasa Haitteshimatta from his favorite manga. He remembers how he managed to find his way home and eat a highly realistic, delicious dinner the previous evening, further convincing him that this experience is far too vivid to be a mere dream. After splashing water on his face, he stares at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, struggling to comprehend how all of his sensory experiences can feel so incredibly authentic. As he adjusts his school tie, he realizes that his memories are no longer vague, and that he has inherited all of the original Tsukasa Haitteshimatta's thoughts, leading him to conclude that he truly died in the truck accident. He looks at his uniform and accepts that, since his old life, family, and unfulfilled desires were left behind, he has no choice but to move forward and live in this new reality. He suddenly collapses to his knees and clutches his head in absolute despair, screaming internally, because he realized he confessed to Sei under the false assumption that he was only dreaming. He hyperventilates in panic as he imagines an awful scenario where Sei is thoroughly disgusted by his sudden hug and repeated confessions, begging him to never approach her again. He weeps against the wall, desperately wishing he could have a do-over to restart his entry into this world, though he cannot help but remember how adorable her reaction was. He arches backward on the floor in physical and mental agony, yelling about how incredibly awkward school will be, until a voice suddenly interrupts his dramatic display. He looks up upside down to see an annoyed girl standing in the doorway, who warns him that he will be late for school, before he realizes that she is his younger sister Ri. He internally notes that there is actually another side heroine in the manga series besides Sei. She is Ri Haitteshimatta, the protagonist's best friend's younger sister, who flatly hands him a wrapped bento box for his school day. He suddenly tears up and sincerely thanks Ri for always being there for him, crying about how glad he is to have such a cute younger sister, while she stares back at him in complete baffled silence. He recalls that Ri is a highly popular underclassman heroine from the original manga series, noting that he was originally a fan of her character himself. Having inherited Tsukasa's memories, he realizes she is no longer just a fictional character to him, but a little sister he genuinely cherishes, which prompts her to ask him what is wrong. He gently pats her head and calls her name, explaining to himself that since she is also destined to be a losing heroine in the original plot, he cannot help but wish for her absolute happiness. With a bright smile, he happily tells her that she is adorable and will definitely find happiness, which only succeeds in thoroughly disgusting her, as she demands to know what is wrong with him. He attempts to placate her, as she turns to open the front door, pouting and grumpily telling him to stop playing around, because it is time to head to school. As they begin their walk, he reflects on how his emotions are gradually adapting to this new world, smiling, as he confirms to himself that his little sister really is incredibly cute, despite her grumpy attitude, while he admits to himself that he still harbors some regrets from his previous life. He resolves to prioritize his sister's well-being and sincerely face the consequences of his confession to Sei. She tells him to do his best, and he wishes her the same as they separate, after which he arrives at school and vows never to let his confession turn into a shameful memory, only to be suddenly grabbed by Yuichi. He is greeted warmly by Yuichi Shijimoto, the main character of the series, and effortlessly returns the greeting as a childhood friend, thanks to the memories he inherited. He notes that Yuichi is typically tall and highly popular as a basketball club member, but wonders why his friend looks completely exhausted as Yuichi suddenly grabs his shoulder. A visibly distressed Yuichi desperately begs him for help, calling it a once-in-a-lifetime favor and leaving him completely baffled. A small sketch highlights the dramatic distress of the crying rom-com protagonist. He stands nearby as Yuichi sits slumped against the wall, holding his head in misery, leaving him entirely confused. He asks Yuichi if the wealthy childhood friend Kaori Tajoin has somehow managed to find out about his planned date with Shiho Fujai's. Yuichi clutches his head in absolute panic, crying out that everything is over, and that Kaori will inevitably interfere and ruin the date if things continue this way. An introduction page showcases Kaori Tajoin walking confidently with her long hair flowing. He tries to recall the original manga's plot, remembering that Kaori indeed found out about the date and interrupted it, but he is left wondering if she has actually discovered it already. Yuichi scratches his head in frustration, explaining that right after he finally managed to get Fujai's to agree to a date, Kaori suddenly messaged him to ask about his Sunday plans. He warily asks if Yuichi is trying to recruit him to help with his date plans, while Yuichi tears up and laments that missing this chance means he might never go out with Fujai's again. Yuichi begs him with tears in his eyes to help trick Kaori about the date's actual timing, but he flatly refuses. Yuichi pathetically clings to his leg as he tries to shake him off, insisting that deceiving Tajoin is completely impossible, despite his desire to be a supportive friend. He reiterates that the task is absolutely impossible no matter how much his friend begs, but his explanation is suddenly cut short by an elegant voice greeting them from behind. An elegant and beautiful voice chimes in, observing that the two of them seem to be engaged in a highly interesting conversation. Both of them freeze in absolute terror upon realizing who has caught them, knowing that everyone considers her to be a flawless young lady. Kaori Tajoin stands gracefully on the stairs, smiling warmly as she asks if she can join her childhood friend and his companion. She elegantly wishes Yuichi and Hisamura a good morning, while a trembling Yuichi can only stutter her name in sheer panic. He internally describes Kaori as a dazzling high-spec quarter European who is deeply in love with her childhood friend Yuichi, noting that her wealthy father is the chairman of the group that runs their school. He recalls that she behaves like a yandere, having used her massive influence since kindergarten to aggressively eliminate any female rivals, which mistakenly led Yuichi to believe he was naturally unpopular with girls. When Kaori inquires about their private conversation, he desperately tries to deflect by claiming it was just standard boy talk that is inappropriate for girls to hear. To save himself, he fabricates a lie that Yuichi wanted to know if they could peek up girls' skirts, which prompts a curious Kaori to step forward and tease Yuichi about his supposed desires. She leans in incredibly close and tells Yuichi to simply ask her directly next time, while he pushes Yuichi closer and claims to be genuinely happy for his friend's good fortune. Although they successfully derail the initial topic, Kaori smoothly circles back to ask Yuichi if he has any plans for Sunday, leaving Yuichi shaking with rage at his betrayal. When Yuichi stammers to make an excuse about his club activities, Kaori easily shuts him down by pointing out that the gym is reserved for the volleyball club on Sunday, leaving him completely exposed. Yuichi desperately claims he just wants to relax and take a break from his busy schedule, prompting Kaori to flash a terrifying knowing smile that sends shivers down his spine. She exposes his lie further by reciting his past claims about wanting to practice as much as possible, leaving him completely paralyzed with fear at how she obtained this information. She chillingly asks if he truly needs a break, forcing a terrified Yuichi to freeze up completely and meekly surrender to her demands. She elegantly bids them farewell and walks away, leaving him to marvel at the overwhelming and terrifying power typical of a rom-com main heroine. Immediately after she leaves, Yuichi grabs his shoulder with a dark, menacing expression, warning him that there is absolutely no way he is letting him get away with this. Yuichi desperately begs him to stop Kaori, but he dismisses the idea as completely absurd and tells him to show some common sense. As they enter their classroom, Yuichi begs him again, claiming it is his once-in-a-lifetime request, though he tells him not to waste such an important favor on a trivial matter. He ignores the pleading Yuichi because he is too consumed with worry about how Sei must think he is disgusting after his overly confident confession the previous day. He resolves to first apologize to Sei and slowly improve her impression of him, but his thoughts are cut short when she suddenly turns around and looks directly in his direction. Upon spotting him, Sei immediately blushes intensely and turns away, leading him to despairingly wonder if his chances with her are already completely ruined. He weakly mutters that he is dead as he begins to wobble, while a confused Yuichi asks what has suddenly happened to him. He sinks into despair, realizing that he and Sei are merely meant to be background wingmen who can never participate in the main romance, and that he cannot possibly hope to stop Kaora's schemes. Trying to find a way out, he suggests that Yuichi should simply seek assistance from someone else if he cannot handle Kaori on his own. He points out that Fujai's best friend, who is highly knowledgeable about the situation, and whom Yuichi has been discussing lately, would be the perfect person to help. He explicitly names Shimada as the solution, while nearby Shiho eagerly teases a blushing and defensive Sei about her situation. He instantly rejects the idea with absolute panic, shouting that she is currently avoiding him, and that attempting to get her help would surely be the death of him. Yuichi chases after him, relentlessly begging him, because no one else knows their secret, while he runs away and screams that involving Shimada is absolutely out of the question. He sits at his desk, sweating, wondering if he should just confess to Yuichi that he proposed to Sei, but quickly decides against it, since Yuichi is notoriously terrible at keeping secrets. He covers his mouth in deep anxiety, panicking over the disastrous consequences if his feelings are accidentally exposed during class, and make things even more uncomfortable for Sei. He is jolted out of his panic when Sei suddenly approaches his desk with her arms crossed, asking him if he was just talking about her. As Yuichi welcomes her arrival, he looks up at her with a glimmer of hope, reasoning that her willingness to speak to him means she does not entirely despise him. His hope is instantly crushed when she completely avoids eye contact with him, turning her head away to ask Yuichi instead if there is anything she can help him with. Yuichi nervously asks if she has time to talk in private after school, while a surprised Sei blushes and mentions that she actually wanted to speak with him about this Sunday. After she asks if the issue is about his relationship with Shiho, Yuichi admits they have a problem, prompting her to agree to help, while Tsukasa sobs silently at his desk. Blushing deeply, she softly proposes that they meet and discuss the matter in the classroom after school has finished. Yuichi asks her what is wrong as she lets out a startled squeak and frantically tries to play it off while looking down at Tsukasa. Blushing furiously, she frantically shouts that meeting in the classroom is out of the question and demands they meet at the school gate after class instead. She quickly walks away, leaving both of them staring after her in complete confusion. While Yuichi wonders aloud if something happened to her, he plays dumb while secretly realizing she panicked specifically when she saw his face. He gets carried away, imagining that her embarrassment means she does not hate him, before shaking his head to remain grounded, though he still cannot help but find her incredibly cute. Yuichi suddenly laughs nervously and apologizes, explaining that he just remembered he has a basketball club meeting after school. He stands there completely dumbfounded, staring blankly at his friend in utter disbelief. when Yuichi casually asks him to go and explain their situation to Shimatta in his place. He stands up in silent rage, screaming internally about how awkward their meeting will be after his recent confession. A small sketch displays a highly embarrassed, say, repeating her worry about the classroom meeting. He summarizes his surreal situation of being reincarnated into his favorite manga. After a truck accident, lamenting that Yuichi's sudden abandonment has forced him into an incredibly awkward solitary meeting with the girl he just confessed to. Standing outside under a darkening sky, he sighs and tells himself that this is absolutely not the right time for such a conversation. He grabs his head in sheer panic, struggling to reconcile his joy at being alone with her against the absolute truckload of awkwardness hanging over them. Cursing Yuichi's name under his breath, he resolves to just take his chances as he spots Sei patiently waiting for him near the school gate. She turns her head with a soft, blushing expression and gently calls him by his last name. He is so captivated by her appearance that he accidentally blurts out that she is beautiful, sending her into an instant explosive blush of pure shock. He awkwardly scratches his head and formally asks if she is free, to which she shyly replies that she is. When she asks where Shijimoto is, he clasps his hands together and nervously explains that Yuichi had a sudden club meeting to attend, leaving her thoroughly dumbfounded. After pouting and questioning what Yuichi could possibly be thinking, she suddenly gasps in realization as she processes the fact that the two of them are now entirely alone together. He quickly breaks the silence by confirming that they need to discuss helping Shiho on Sunday, suggesting they walk and talk while she clutches her bag and quietly speaks his name. Blushing slightly, she suggests that they head to a nearby cafe to discuss the matter instead of talking on the street. He stands frozen in utter shock, completely stunned by her invitation. He wonders if he is still dreaming as his soul nearly leaves his body, while a flustered Sei quickly stammers that they shouldn't speak while standing up since it is going to be a long conversation. He silently thanks Yuichi, feeling incredibly grateful for his friend's convenient absence. They arrive at the cafe, where Sei quietly sips a sweet frozen drink through a straw. Noticing his gaze, she self-consciously sulks and asks why he is staring, worrying that ordering such a sweet treat does not suit her cool image. He quickly reassures her by declaring that she is actually the absolute cutest, causing her to blush intensely and quietly thank him. Thrilled to discover this hidden, sweet, loving side of her, he happily asks if her drink is good, but his casual use of her first name causes her to suddenly choke. He leaps up in concern and apologizes, addressing her as Shimatta. But as she recovers from her coughing fit, she blushes and asks why he keeps switching back to that formal name. He nervously rubs his neck and confesses that he has always called her by her first name in his heart, prompting her to take another shy sip of her drink in response. He explains that yesterday's confession was quite sudden and offers to stick to calling her Shimatta so he does not overstep, while she silently trembles as she continues to drink. She sets her glass down on the table and softly admits that she does not actually mind him using her first name. Surprised, he asks if she is truly okay with it, and she quietly confirms she is, though she hesitates, as if wanting to add something else. She blushingly adds that since it is embarrassing, he should only call her by her first name when they are completely alone together, triggering an explosive wave of panic from him. Desperately trying to steady his racing heart, he hesitantly asks if her request is a roundabout way of accepting his confession. She instantly slams her hands down and stands up, her face steaming bright red, as she loudly demands to know what on earth gave him such an idea. He frantically stammers in self-defense, pointing out that she was the one who just permitted him to use her first name in private. She looks away in absolute silent embarrassment, leaving him to wonder what her reaction truly implies. Flustered, she frantically clarifies that she only permitted him to use her first name and has definitely not accepted his confession, prompting him to quickly apologize and backtrack. She defensively reiterates that the permission to use her first name is completely separate, preparing to deliver her actual decision regarding his confession. As he begins to despair over her intense denials, She tightly grips the table and nervously blurts out that her words did not mean she was rejecting him either. Sitting back down, she quietly apologizes and explicitly clarifies that she did not mean to reject his confession. Looking down with a soft blush, she shyly explains that she is actually considering his confession in a positive light for the time being. Stunned by her admission, he tries to ask her for clarification, but a thoroughly flustered Sei panics and loudly insists they postpone this discussion for another time. He immediately drops the subject and salutes with exaggerated compliance, declaring that they should get straight to the main issue at hand. He silently berates himself as a coward for not pressing her further, though he is internally thrilled by the incredibly nice hint she just dropped. She quickly shifts back to her cool composure, summarizing that since Tajoin already knows about Shiho and Shijimoto's date, he wants her cooperation to ensure they can proceed without any interruptions. He confirms the plan, but notes that it is purely Yuuichi's personal request, reassuring her that it is entirely fine if she refuses, since he has no intention of forcing her to take sides. He internally recalls that his character is supposed to be on good terms with Kaori, making him ready to force Yuuichi to give up if she refuses. But she gently smiles and agrees to help anyway. She explains that Shiho is finally gathering the courage to confess her feelings, meaning they absolutely cannot allow anyone to ruin her chance, which leaves him deeply impressed by her loyalty. While he internally swoons over her handsome and protective nature, she pulls him back to reality by asking if he actually has a concrete plan to deal with Tajoin. He admits that, because they are dealing with Kaori, they have absolutely zero chance of stopping her if her family's massive business conglomerate decides to use its full power. However, he suggests a strategy to turn the tide by having Yuuichi spend the night at his house on the day before the date, which leaves her thoroughly confused. He recalls that in the original manga, Kaori successfully ruins the date, but notes to himself that there is a key difference in this current situation. He explains that in the original story, Yuuichi successfully hid his plans, and Kaori only discovered the date by accident when it was already happening. He notes that Yuuichi's panic during her visit is what originally made her suspicious enough to tail them, turning the entire date into a chaotic mess. He proposes that they bypass Kaori's surveillance by starting the date from his house, instead of Yuuichi's, hoping to buy some valuable time, despite needing a convincing cover-up. Though he worries the plan might fail since they are deviating from the original story, she thoughtfully suggests that she could also have Shiho depart from her house to help throw off any pursuit. He explains that there is no need for Shiho to depart from her house, reasoning that Tajoin is likely only suspicious of Yuuichi's secret Sunday plans, and remains unaware of who his actual date partner is. When she asks if Kaori is also ignorant of the date's location, he agrees, and suggests she might not even realize it is a date, prompting her to suggest that they simply focus on preventing Kaori from tailing them. She reasons that despite Kaori's intelligence, she cannot possibly discover the secret location of the date, which he confirms is correct. After he concludes that they will succeed if they can hide Yuuichi at his house and safely send him on his way, she notes there is little for her to do under this plan, leading him to apologetically admit he might have wasted her time. She smiles warmly and gently assures him that she is always available to offer advice or assist in any way she can for Shiho's sake. Her cool and supportive nature sends him into an internal frenzy of sheer adoration as he silently declares his love for her. As they walk outside, he points out that it is getting late and offers to walk her to her destination, prompting her to reply that she is heading to the station before cutting herself off. Sensing her hesitation, he asks what is wrong while she shyly begs him not to laugh at her before explaining. Blushing and fidgeting, she admits that she is heading to the bookstore because the latest volume of her favorite manga series is being released today. He cannot help but chuckle at her adorable hobby, causing an embarrassed Sei to angrily scold him for laughing despite her warning. He suggests that they stop by the bookstore together, since they are already nearby, prompting a surprised Sei to ask if he is truly all right with that. Smiling warmly, he explains that it is his way of apologizing for keeping her out late, adding that he thinks going on a bookstore date with her will be incredibly fun. She falls into a stunned silence, causing him to immediately panic and frantically wave his hands to apologize, fearing he made her uncomfortable by suddenly calling it a date. She quietly whispers for him to follow her and begins walking ahead, leaving him startled as he quickly catches up. Turning back with a deep blush, she softly asks if he will accompany her to the bookstore. A small character profile card notes her incredibly sweet and detailed custom coffee order at the cafe. The scene shifts to the interior of a massive bookstore, where he suddenly realizes that things are taking a turn for the worse. His heart beats violently in his chest as he struggles to believe that he is actually going on a bookstore date with his beloved waifu. Trying to distract himself, he nervously asks what books she is looking for while she reaches out and pulls a volume from the shelf. She excitedly holds up her new book and calls it Tengabu, referring to her favorite series about being reincarnated as a goblin. He is completely unfamiliar with the title, which deeply shocks her, as she frantically explains that it stands for That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Goblin, and is incredibly famous. She enthusiastically explains that the trending series has recently received an anime adaptation, while he internally finds her incredibly adorable when she is this excited. He observes that the isekai trend is going strong in this world, as well, though he laments that his own favorite series does not exist here. He mentions that he might buy the series next time as well, explaining that he wants to be able to discuss manga together with her, despite her warning about the 10-volume length. He pumps his fist in silent determination, confident that buying all the volumes is completely worth it just to have a common topic of conversation with her. When she gently calls his name, she kindly offers to lend him her copy since she recommended it, promising to bring it to school, which prompts him to enthusiastically thank her. Blushing softly, she admits that she has never had anyone to discuss manga with before, and that she would be truly happy to talk about it with him. He clutches his chest and struggles to hold back another explosive confession of love, deeply overwhelmed by how sweet she is. He gasps and trembles, admitting that she is so cute he wants to scream, prompting a highly embarrassed Sei to frantically order him to be quiet. He looks at her with complete earnestness and states that there is absolutely no shame in finding her cute, which only causes her to panic further. She tells him she is going to purchase the book and heads toward the register while he promises to wait for her by the exit. As she walks away to pay, he turns and pauses, his attention caught by a different section on the shelves. He walks over to ask if she found another book of interest, startling her into a sweaty panic as she desperately tries to hide what she was looking at. He looks at the shoujo manga section and recalls that in the original story, she harbored a secret interest in romance manga, but actively avoided reading it because she believed it did not match her personality. He remembers an extra chapter where she went to buy those manga in a clumsy disguise to keep her hobby a secret from her friends. Frustrated that it took him so long to remember this detail, he turns to her with renewed determination and calls out her name. He enthusiastically claims that he is actually a fan of shoujo manga as well, and asks if she has any recommendations, which instantly lights up her face with joy. She eagerly recommends a classic title called Coiffura as a great entry point for male readers, prompting him to happily agree to buy a copy and give it a try. He asks her if she is interested in lending each other manga, which leaves her looking highly surprised as she repeats his proposal. He explains that they can swap books by having him borrow Tengabu, while lending her Coiffura in return, prompting her to happily agree with starry eyes as long as he does not mind reading shoujo manga. She blushingly downplays her excitement by claiming she is just willing to give it a try, without being picky, making him smile warmly as he expresses his pleasure at her response. She quickly runs off to the register to pay while he happily waves her off, thrilled that they have made a solid promise to swap books, and that she is so visibly excited. He reflects on how incredibly glad he is that they decided to stop by the bookstore together. Standing in line, she notes to herself that she never would have expected him to be a fan of shoujo manga as well. She celebrates internally, because his offer finally gives her a chance to read the romance manga she was always too embarrassed to buy, before suddenly pausing in confusion as she looks down at her hands. She reflects on their interaction in the aisles, noting that, despite his claims, he seemed much more interested in the shonen manga section, making her wonder about his true intentions. She wonders with a racing heart if he deliberately chose to buy a shoujo manga solely for her sake. When she returns to the exit, he warmly welcomes her back, leaving her slightly startled by his friendly greeting. As they head out, he happily comments on his quick purchase and mentions how much he is looking forward to reading his new book at home, while she quietly wonders if he truly noticed her secret interest. He suggests that it is time for them to head home now that they have their books, which she quietly agrees to, while clutching her bag tightly, deeply touched by his consideration. She turns to him with a warm, genuine smile and thanks him for accompanying her, calling him a nice person, despite his clumsiness, which leaves him utterly spellbound as they finally say their goodbyes and promise to discuss Sunday over the phone. The scene shifts to the exterior of the apartment buildings on the following evening. He lies blissfully on his bed, smiling to himself as he recalls how much fun he had with her after school the previous day. As he reviews his memories of her enjoying sweets at the cafe and browsing books at the bookstore, he begins to realize the true nature of their outing. He suddenly wide eyes in shock as he realizes their outing was practically an after-school date, letting out a muffled scream of joy that irritates his sister next door just before the doorbell rings to signal his guest's arrival. He heads downstairs on Saturday night to open the front door, knowing that tomorrow morning is crucial to ensuring Yuichi can safely embark on his date without Kaori's interference. He opens the door with a welcoming smile, only to find an incredibly pale and nervous Yuichi standing on his doorstep. He invites him in and asks why he looks so exhausted on the night before his big date, jokingly questioning if he recently lost a basketball match or something similar. He assures his friend that his parents are not home yet and tells him to come upstairs to relax, while a highly stressed Yuichi gulps nervously. Suddenly, Yuichi bows deeply and loudly apologizes to him, leaving him completely startled and confused. He turns his head and spots Kaori Tajoin standing gracefully behind the apologetic Yuichi. He gulps in absolute shock as Kaori calmly steps past them and enters the house. She smiles brilliantly and warmly greets him by his name, noting that it is a lovely evening. Forcing a tense smile, he nervously greets her and demands to know why she is at his house, while she cheerfully explains that she simply gave Yuichi a ride after hearing he was staying over. She sighs and expresses her envy over their sleepover, wistfully wishing she could join them, which sends a jolt of sheer terror through both of the boys. He tightly grabs Yuichi's shoulder and frantically assures her that they would never dare to let a beautiful girl like her stay overnight, with two boys urging his friend to agree. While Yuichi weakly agrees, he grips his friend's shoulder with painful intensity, internally apologizing to say, because their plan is already on the brink of absolute failure. He feels utterly overwhelmed by her presence, wondering if her dazzling appearance is due to what people call a main heroine's aura. Determined to secure the success of the upcoming date, they commit to carrying out their defensive operation to keep Kaori at bay. However, Kaori stands in their way like a towering force, unleashing her overwhelming main heroine power and leaving them trembling. Although it seems like the date is doomed to fail, his thoughts are interrupted when a gentle voice calls his name, causing his heart to race as he fidgets. He turns to see Sei standing before him in lovely casual clothes, blushing slightly as she apologizes for keeping him waiting. He blushes deeply and rubs his head, quickly stammering that he only just arrived. He realizes with immense joy that he is actually at the amusement park on a date with her. After Kaori eventually left their house, a text message arrives on his phone asking what they did wrong and how she found out about the plan. Yuichi drops to his hands and knees to apologize, but he dismisses the display, prompting his friend to defensively argue about his wounded pride. Ignoring the drama, He asks about the details of the upcoming date, causing a weeping Yuyuichi to admit his pride does not matter and desperately beg for help. He admits to himself that even though they successfully got Kaori to leave, there is likely no way to stop her from eventually interfering with the date. He considers that in the original storyline, Shiho and Yuyuichi faced Kaori's interruptions, but if they successfully confess, they will finally start dating without any further obstacles. He worries that a flawless, undisturbed date might permanently alter the plot, erasing the crucial segment where Kaori's feelings are eventually resolved and saved. Though he wants Yuyuichi to be happy, his dedication as a fan makes him want to avoid changing the story too drastically. But his thoughts are interrupted when Yuyuichi points out that his phone is ringing. He looks blankly at his screen as Yuyuichi asks what is wrong, reading a text from Sei suggesting they monitor the date on site to stop Kaori directly. Yuyuichi weeps with gratitude at Shimada's kindness, before grabbing his shoulder and begging him to tag along with her, arguing that they cannot let a girl go to an amusement park completely alone. He realizes with a racing heart that this arrangement effectively books them another date together, replying that he will accompany her to protect the others, while she expresses her reassurance. Back in the present, he wonders if he is dreaming as they head toward an unexpected double date, while a shy Sei quietly calls out to him. He suddenly covers his eyes with both hands, explaining that she is too cute to look at directly, which leaves her thoroughly flustered and confused. She sighs at his dramatic behavior, while he secretly peeks through his fingers, highly distracted by the brief glimpses of her midriff whenever she moves her arms. He struggles to maintain his composure under the stimulation of her outfit, while she sweatily asks if he is going to keep acting so bizarrely. He explains that her casual outfit is simply so incredibly cute that it completely overwhelmed him, causing her to blush deeply. She smiles softly and thanks him, pleased that her effort was worth it, recalling how she had panicked and called Shiho for fashion advice beforehand. He continues to dramatically praise her, expressing his absolute gratitude to the universe for this day, which prompts an overwhelmed and flustered Sei to beg him to stop. She softly admits that this is also her first time seeing him in casual clothes, adding that she thinks he looks cool. He turns bright red and stammers his gratitude, completely caught off guard by her compliment. He hurries to catch up with her, while thinking that she is the one who looks cool, just as she asks him when he arrived at their meeting spot. He casually claims he arrived only slightly before her, but she looks at him in complete shock upon realizing that he actually arrived a full hour before their scheduled meeting time. She asks why he arrived so early, and if he was bored waiting, to which he replies that he simply wanted to ensure he would not make her wait. He happily adds that he is really looking forward to their date, which causes a startled Sei to blush intensely and frantically argue that it is not actually a date. Pointing her finger at him, she firmly reminds him that their primary objective is to keep watch over Shiho and Shijimoto's date and block Tajoin's interference. He complies with a salute, while crying internally over being the only one excited about their date, as she quietly looks down with a blush. As they walk, she shyly confesses that this is her first time going out alone with a boy, and that she has not been to an amusement park in a very long time. Looking away with a deep blush, she softly admits that she is genuinely looking forward to it. Overwhelmed by the quiet atmosphere, she frantically demands that he say something to ease her intense embarrassment, while he remains dazed by her confession. He completely freezes up with spiral eyes, as it dawns on him that this might actually be her very first date. He firmly clenches his fist in determination and calls out her first name, prompting her to turn back in surprise. Gazing at her with absolute sincerity, he pledges that he will make sure she thoroughly enjoys this day. Her eyes widen in complete surprise as his words of dedication sink in. She quickly turns her head away to hide her deep blush, muttering once more that it is not supposed to be a date. She then looks back at him with a tender, gentle smile and softly tells him that she is counting on him. He sheepishly rubs his neck and confesses that it is his first time as well, asking her to keep her expectations low, which coaxes a soft laugh of amusement from her. She notes that they are both beginners, then walking alongside him, while expressing her hope that they can simply have fun together. They both a warm, joyful smile as he happily agrees with her. The scene transitions to the amusement park entrance 10 minutes before the date, where Tsukasa and Sei keep watch from behind the bushes while a nervous Yuyuichi waits nearby. While he proudly claims that Yuyuichi's early arrival is due to the great example, Hisechi dryly counters that his own habit of arriving an hour early is hardly a good example. He triumphantly raises his finger and argues that arriving early is actually the ideal scenario since it maximizes the time spent with one's crush. His logic leaves her blushing and speechless as she looks away while he continues to smile warmly at her side. As he scans the crowd and notes that Tajoin has not arrived, yet she taps his shoulder to alert him that Shiho has just shown up for the date. From their hiding spot, they watch as Shiho and Yuyuichi happily meet up and greet each other near the entrance. He lets out a sigh of relief and salutes, glad that the two were at least able to meet up successfully, though he quickly notices the gentle look on her face as she watches them. He quietly gazes at her from the side, silently wondering how she truly feels deep down as she watches her crush meet up with her best friend. He reflects on how she originally harbored feelings for Yuyuichi, and must have watched their developing relationship with incredibly complicated emotions. Although he worries that asking such a personal question might be overstepping, he softly asks her if she still harbors feelings for Yuyuichi. She reacts with surprise to his sudden query, but after a moment of thought, she admits that she has only ever viewed Yuyuichi as a guy she was slightly interested in. She gazes directly forward, her eyes widening slightly as she prepares to say more. She suddenly stands up in a fluster, clutching her knees, and asking him if that is the answer he wanted to hear, which panics him as he warns her that they might get spotted. She clarifies with a blush that she currently does not have any feelings for Shijimoto, leaving him entirely stunned as she prepares to continue. She bites her lip in deep, silent embarrassment as her face turns completely red. She suddenly cuts herself off and frantically points out that the couple is entering the park, walking away quickly to avoid answering, while he desperately asks her to finish what she was saying. Turning back with a brilliant blush, she defiantly yells that she will not tell him yet, and urges him to move before they lose sight of their targets, prompting him to quickly follow. Nearby, a car tire suddenly screeches to a halt at the curb. A passenger steps out of the luxury vehicle and thanks the elderly driver at the wheel. Standing outside the entrance of the amusement park, Kaori Tajoin looks up at the massive Ferris wheel towering in the sky. She strokes her face and observes her surroundings, confirming that this is indeed the location of the date. A small sketch highlights her deep embarrassment over having followed Shiho's bold fashion advice to wear an outfit that reveals her midriff. Back at home, Ri stands in the kitchen doorway and looks completely bewildered, asking her brother why he is already heading out when she has just finished cooking breakfast. He quickly ties his shoes and apologizes, explaining that he is in a massive hurry and will not need breakfast or a packed lunch today. He asks her to let Yuyuichi eat the breakfast she prepared instead, and requests that she guide Yuyuichi up to his room when he arrives later, leaving her confused. She points out that they should be going out together if his friend is visiting, but he explains that they are meeting different people today, causing her to ask where he is heading in such a massive rush. He laughs nervously and claims he is just leaving early, so he does not keep anyone waiting, prompting her to stare at him with deep suspicion and ask if he is actually going out with a girl. He awkwardly scratches his head and shyly admits that she is correct. She stands frozen in absolute silent shock upon hearing his confession. He bids her farewell and slides the front door open to leave, while she waves him off blankly, her mind completely consumed by the realization that her brother is meeting a girl. She clutches her hand to her chest in disbelief, quietly wondering if her brother is actually going on a date. Later, Yuyuichi sits at the dining table with his breakfast, nervously asking her if it is truly all right for them to eat together in the living room. She takes a bite of her toast and assures him it is fine, dismissing her brother's strict instructions to stay in his room as a mere joke. Relieved, Yuichi joins her in expressing thanks for the meal before they begin eating. Yuichi happily gives a thumbs up and praises her cooking, causing her to look up in surprise. Blushing slightly at his enthusiastic praise, she quietly thanks him. Yuichi quietly calls her name, catching her attention as she continues to eat. He gently points out that she seems a bit down and spaced out, asking her if she has something on her mind. Flustered by his concern, she quickly apologizes and insists she is fine, fidgeting nervously as she worries about being rude to a house guest. Looking down with a slight blush, she quietly asks if he knows the identity of the person her brother is meeting today. Yuichi answers with a calm smile that he does indeed know, which leaves her completely wide-eyed with shock. He explains that the girl is in his class and that her name is Haitteshimatta, while Ri softly repeats her name to herself. Overwhelmed by the confirmation, she asks if her brother is officially dating her, but Yuichi clarifies that he does not think they have officially started dating yet. Yuichi adds that he heard Tsukasa has already confessed his feelings to her, sending another massive wave of shock through Ri. Ri stands up in complete shock at the news, while Yuichi explains that Tsukasa admitted it directly to him yesterday, confirming that it is true. She slumps down in a daze as she processes the news of her brother's confession, prompting a concerned Yuichi to ask if she is all right. Yuichi finishes his meal and cheerfully thanks her for the delicious breakfast, which she acknowledges with a quiet, distracted response. She wobbles away to clear the table, prompting Yuichi to panickingly interject and offer to wash the dishes himself. Yuichi takes the dirty dishes from her, warning her that she seems too out of it and might drop the plates, while she quietly thanks him. Yuichi tells her that he will handle the rest of the cleanup and advises her to head to her room to take a break. She quietly agrees to his suggestion and thanks him before heading away from the kitchen. As he washes the plates, Yuichi observes her departure and silently notes that she seemed quite upset to hear about her brother's crush, concluding that she is very protective of Tsukasa. She walks back into her bedroom and throws herself face first onto her bed. Burying her face in her pillow, she grumpily mutters about her foolish older brother. She frustratedly kicks her legs on the bed, feeling deeply vexed because her brother had previously told her she was cute. A closing text card states that since entering the world of a romantic comedy manga, the protagonist is determined to do his best to make the losing heroine happy. At the school lockers, Shiho excitedly asks Sei what Hisamura told her during his confession, leaving a flustered Sei struggling to respond. When Sei stammers, Shiho teases her by pointing out that his dramatic declaration sounded more like a marriage proposal, which sends Sei into a panic. Shiho explains that telling someone he will make her happy and dedicate his life to her sounds exactly like a proposal, forcing a deeply blushing Sei to reluctantly agree. With her mind spinning in complete panic, Sei frantically reasons that even if she were to accept his confession, it absolutely does not mean she is currently considering marriage. In a flashback, she recalls walking home with him as he learned about her older brother, and noted that her sibling was the reason she began reading shonen manga. She remembers him mentioning his own cute younger sister, who is currently in a rebellious phase, which made her secretly wonder if he has a sibling fixation. He had immediately panicked and strongly denied her suspicion, while she quietly noted his frantic response. Blushing deeply, she realizes that she will have to get along with his younger sister if they ever date, before instantly catching herself and panicking over why she is already assuming they will become a couple. Back in her room, Sei speaks to Shiho on the phone, thanking her for helping to select her clothes for the upcoming day. Shiho teasingly reminds her that they must put in their best effort since it is a date, which makes a nervous Sei ask if Shiho is truly comfortable with this arrangement. She reacts with shock when Shiho questions whether it is wise to cover up her legs and midriff. She remembers trying on an incredibly short mini-skirt that made her deeply uncomfortable, arguing that they would be moving around too much for such an outfit. She recalls how Shiho had then pushed her to try a crop top that exposed her midriff, instead praising her figure and neckline despite her severe embarrassment. In the present, she blushes deeply as she reflects on those embarrassing outfit choices. She tells Shiho that she does not understand why showing her midriff is considered appealing, admitting that she simply finds it too embarrassing. Shiho smiles knowingly on her bed, teasing her about the fact that she readily agreed to go on a date in the first place. Shiho directly asks if this means there is a very high chance they will end up officially dating, throwing her into an immediate panic. She frantically argues that she might discover something she dislikes about him during the outing, which only prompts Shiho to laugh and ask if she will indeed date him if her impression remains positive. Too embarrassed to answer, she quickly declares she is hanging up, prompting Shiho to bid her a warm good night and thank her for the help before they end their call. Both of them smile softly as they resolve to do their absolute best on their respective outings tomorrow. A small drawing depicts the girls wishing each other a good night before going to sleep. Clutching her phone, she resolves to use the upcoming day to get to know him better before delivering her final decision on his confession. She blushes as she touches her midriff, nervously wondering if he would truly be pleased to see her in such a revealing outfit. She lifts her shirt slightly to look at her midriff, completely unable to decide what to wear despite all of her friends' advice as she prepares for bed. Shiho enthusiastically points toward the massive roller coaster, eagerly suggesting to Yuichi that they ride it first. As the couple happily walks toward the ride, he and Sei keep watch from their hiding spot in the bushes. Peeking through the leaves, he notes that they are starting the date with a flashy ride while Sei closely monitors their targets. He praises Shiho's bold choices, prompting an excited Sei to pump her fist, and eagerly suggests that they line up for the roller coaster too. He panics at her suggestion, arguing that they should simply watch from the exit, so they do not lose sight of the couple, which instantly causes her to look down in deep disappointment. Observing her sad reaction, he is plagued with sudden regret, as he realizes that the original story never mentioned her liking scary rides. He is torn between his desire to make her happy by riding together, and his duty to keep watch and prevent Tajoin from ruining the date. As they walk, he reminds himself that they are only on this date because of their mission, realizing that losing sight of their objective would be completely counterproductive. He nervously glances back at the towering roller coaster track as she continues to look down in silent disappointment. He tightly clenches his fist in determination. He finally fires himself up and declares that they should get on the ride, refusing to let the girl he loves look sad while Yuichi and Shiho walk ahead. They board the roller coaster, where Sei laughs with absolute delight while he screams in pure soul-crushing terror. After the ride, he collapses completely flat on a bench, feeling utterly dead and dizzy from the experience. She approaches his slumped form with a cold bottle of water, looking down at him with a highly concerned expression. He sits up to accept the drink and promises to pay her back, sheepishly explaining that he got carried away and forgot his own limits, while she playfully scolds him for not speaking up sooner. He smiles weakly to himself, silently lamenting that his weakness to roller coasters has carried over into his new body. As they rest on the bench, he apologizes for showing her such a pathetic side of himself, but she gently chuckles and tells him she is glad to see this side of him. He is deeply comforted by her gentle words, finding her incredibly cute, as she playfully warns him to avoid playing pranks on her in the future. He attempts to pivot by suggesting they try the spinning coffee cups next, but a still recovering Sei immediately accuses him of trying to make her seriously dizzy. They sit together in the teacup, where he nervously speaks her name, as she crossly agrees to the ride while reminding him to stay focused on tailing the couple. She giggles and admits that she was only joking, completely easing his worry. He stares at her in absolute awe, his heart beating wildly at her radiant smile. She notes that the couple is not too far away and suggests they head toward the concession stand to catch up, while he happily decides that her enjoyment is all that matters. The giant Ferris wheel continues to spin slowly as they navigate through the park. He glances over at her, realizing with some relief that 2 hours have passed since the date began without any sign of Kaori appearing to disrupt their plans. While he notes that the date is progressing normally after lunch and wonders when Kaori will make her move, She softly calls his name to get his attention. She silently points in the couple's direction, prompting him to ask what has caught her eye. He looks at the haunted house building. They are approaching and notes that the couple is heading inside, but suddenly senses that she seems unusually tense. He reflects on how a haunted house is a classic romantic comedy date trope, designed for physical contact, noting that this particular series features a unique twist on the usual cliché. In a twist, Yuichi is the one who is secretly terrified, desperately trying to make excuses about the ride being for kids to avoid going inside. While he notes that his friend's desperate attempts to skip the ride are completely futile, Shiho cheerfully insists that she actually enjoys haunted houses. She pumps her fists excitedly and declares that they should forget about age and embrace their inner child while visiting the park. When she pulls Shigemoto's arm, he desperately points out a different roller coaster they have not ridden yet to distract her, causing Shigemoto's fear to become increasingly obvious. Shiho looks up at him with a soft expression and gently asks if he is actually scared of haunted houses, causing him to freeze in sheer embarrassment. Forcing himself to save face, Shigemoto loudly denies it and bravely marches toward the entrance, much to her delight as she cheers him on. Watching them head inside, he notes that her excitement to enter, despite knowing Shigemoto's fear, is exactly how the events unfolded in the original story. He ponders Shigemoto's preferences, recalling how the source material explains that Shiho's outwardly gentle nature actually hides a surprisingly sadistic side that is highly popular with readers. Once the couple enters the attraction, he turns to her excitedly and declares that they must hurry inside to catch up, but she reacts with sudden hesitation. He sprints toward the entrance without realizing that she has reached her hand out in panic, desperately pleading for him to wait. Having missed her subtle hints during the roller coaster incident, he steels his resolve to not let her down inside the haunted house, promising to give it his absolute best shot. Inside the pitch-black attraction, a horrifying screaming ghost suddenly jumps out at them. Both of them shriek in pure terror as she frantically presses herself against his side. As they walk deeper into the dark hallway, he begins to harbor a sudden suspicion about her behavior. He warily asks if she is actually afraid of haunted houses, immediately panicking when her embarrassed reaction confirms his fears and makes him realize he has made another massive mistake. He warns her not to run since the dark path is dangerous, but she stubbornly denies that she is rushing as she continues to speed ahead. As she begins to ask if he is familiar with this specific attraction, a dangling leg suddenly drops from the ceiling, sending her into a panic as she tightly grabs his arm. A ghost actor begins walking toward them, causing a terrified Sei to hide completely behind his back, while he turns bright red as he feels the soft press of her body against him. He stammers her name in complete embarrassment as she continues to hug him tightly, frantically, suggesting that they need to leave the area. She desperately clutches his clothing, crying out that she cannot handle the terror anymore. Blushing deeply with tears in her eyes, she tightly holds his jacket and whimpers that she is too scared to let go. His mind goes completely blank, feeling as if a small universe is unfolding directly before his eyes. He violently shakes his head in shock, forcing himself to stay focused by reminding himself that she is simply terrified of her surroundings. While her tight hold makes his heart pound like crazy, he tries to stay calm, even as he notices that his hand is brushing right against her. He is completely overwhelmed by the direct contact, feeling his hand resting against her bare midriff, and his arm wedged closely against her body. Red-faced and sweating, he mentally screams in agony, wondering how normal romantic comedy protagonists ever manage to survive such overwhelming situations. Exhausted and breathing heavily from the sheer tension, he realizes he needs to escape immediately, or his heart might give out, prompting her to look up and speak his name. When she looks up at him with teary, blushing eyes to ask what is wrong, he lets out a startled shriek of pure surprise. He sweatily tells her not to worry about him and urges that they focus entirely on escaping the haunted house as quickly as possible, desperately trying to survive her adorable upward gaze. Holding his sleeve tightly, She softly agrees that they should do their best to get through it, leaving him highly flustered by her close proximity. He internally screams in agony that he is already dead from the overwhelming cuteness of her behavior. They finally escape the ride, and he cries tears of absolute relief that his heart managed to survive the intense experience. She shudders and admits that the attraction terrified her, prompting him to bow and apologize profusely for dragging her inside. He sinks into gloom and promises to reflect on his inconsiderate behavior, while she blushes and weakly insists that she was not actually that scared. She looks down with a gentle blush and admits that while it was indeed scary, she actually had fun, and tells him not to worry about it. She quickly changes the subject by checking her phone, alerting him that Haitteshimatta and Shiho are currently heading to the illumination display. He tilts his head in confusion, unfamiliar with the term. She explains that the park features a famous and beautiful light display at night, before suddenly looking down and hesitating once again. With her face turning bright red, she shyly mentions the park legend that any couple who visits the light display together will remain together forever. She tells him that since Kaori has not appeared, they can finally relax, while he internally recognizes this event as the classic chapter where the couple is supposed to view the lights. He recalls that in the original story, Shiho intended to use this romantic legend to confess her feelings, but Kaori intervened, forcing the three of them to view the lights together. He turns his head with a serious expression, deeply troubled by a sudden realization. The park around them remains lively and cheerful as the evening progresses. She asks him what is wrong, while he silently notes that they still have not spotted any sign of Kaori nearby. He worries that if Kaori does not interfere, Shiho and Haitteshimatta's love will succeed flawlessly without her obstacle. Since Kaori was clearly shown pursuing Haitteshimatta just the day before, he struggles to understand why she has suddenly chosen not to show up today. He clenches his fist, realizing that if Haitteshimatta and Shiho successfully start dating now, Kaori will never seek Haitteshimatta's help to resolve her own deep troubles, which is an outcome he cannot allow to happen. Knowing Kaori will never find happiness this way, he resolves to intervene, silently apologizing to Sei, just as she blushingly mentions that she also has something important to tell him at the display. He bows deeply to a surprised Sei, apologizing and explaining that there is something he has to do before stepping backward to make a quick exit. She reaches out and tells him to wait, but he is already running off while shouting back that he will return as soon as he is finished. Left completely alone under the sky, she calls out his name in utter confusion. He sprints down the path, reflecting that Haitteshimatta will eventually have to choose between the main heroines, but deciding that he cannot let their story unfold in this manner. He silently urges Kaori not to give up just yet, as she sits completely alone on a park bench looking down with a sad and lonely expression. He runs as fast as he can, declaring to himself that Kaori is his second favorite heroine in the series, and that he cannot let her remain unhappy. A new chapter introduction introduces Kaori Tajoin's background, describing her as a girl who has been starved for love since her childhood. The narration explains that her mother passed away shortly after giving birth to her. Her grandfather raised her, and her incredibly wealthy father was always far too busy with his conglomerate to spend time with her. It notes that her only family interaction came during a highly formal, once-a-month dinner with her father at a luxury restaurant. During these dinners, her father would politely ask if everything was fine in her life, turning their rare meetings into a stiff transactional reporting of events with very little real warmth. Hiding her loneliness, the young girl would smile politely and falsely assure her father that everything in her life was perfectly fine. Her high pride and fear of causing trouble for her father prevented her from ever showing any sign of weakness, leaving her to stare wistfully out of her limousine window at the distant city. Having never experienced true parental affection, the first person to ever show her genuine warmth was Haitteshimatta, who would wait outside her family gates. This profound kindness led her to believe that Haitteshimatta was the only person destined for her in the entire world. Back in the present, she sits completely alone on the bench, looking down with a sad, empty expression. Suddenly, A boy's sneakers walk up to the bench where she is sitting. She looks up in surprise to greet him while he stands before her panting heavily from running and returns the greeting. She stands up and playfully asks if he was not supposed to be on a fun date with his girlfriend, demanding to know why he has suddenly appeared. She looks down sadly and tells him that his efforts to stop her are pointless because she no longer intends to interfere with the date, leaving him completely shocked as he asks why she is giving up. He asks her directly if she likes Yuichi, and she softly confirms that he is correct. She fondly lists the qualities she loves about Yuichi, recalling his athletic nature, his expressive, simple-minded face, and most of all his deep kindness in reaching out to her when they were young. She explains that since it is natural for someone so wonderful to be popular, she resolved from a young age to marry him, and actively protected him from superficial girls who only cared about his appearance. Believing she loved him more than anyone else, she initially assumed Shiho was just like the other superficial girls, but seeing Shiho's genuine smile made her recall Yuichi's recent protective words. She remembers Yuichi worrying that her parents would be anxious if she stayed out too late, sadly noting to herself that she has no parents who would worry about her in that way. She reflects on the painful reality that there are no loving parents waiting for her inside her family's massive, lonely mansion. Lacking the warmth of her deceased mother and unable to connect with her distant father, she wonders if she is even capable of showing Shijimoto genuine love or smiling at him as brightly as Shiho does. Clasping her hands together, she admits her growing confusion while he quietly watches her and notes that he had suspected as much. He realizes she is attempting to abandon her feelings for Yuichi solely because of her deeply painful family dynamic. He internally panics, realizing that his decision to let Yuichi stay over completely derailed the original storyline, leaving Yuichi with no time to intervene and resolve Kaora's family issues before his confession to Shiho. Acknowledging that they have already deviated too far from the original story to go back, he resolves that there is only one course of action left for him to take. Intentionally playing the role of the bad guy, he smugly accuses her of simply getting scared, which prompts her to calmly reply that he could never understand her situation. He sharply counters that feelings can never be understood if they are not put into words, loudly boasting that this is exactly why he openly confesses his love to Sei, and tells his sister how cute she is. She looks at him with complete bafflement, questioning why he is suddenly bragging about his sister, while he prepares to clarify his point. He boldly tells her that she has no right to make assumptions, since she does not understand her father's true feelings, either, which makes her defensively ask what he could possibly know about her family. He aggressively yells that the only thing he cares about is whether she will make an effort to find out, or not, leaving her completely stunned. Looking down with a heavy heart, she quietly objects that she knows her father is entirely indifferent toward her, though she concedes that actions can speak louder than words. He looks her straight in the eyes and directly challenges her to verify her father's love once and for all. He dares her to call her father right now and ask him directly if he loves her, which she frantically dismisses as impossible because her father is the busy president of the Tajoin group. Trembling and on the verge of tears, she panics and argues that she cannot disrupt her father's tightly managed schedule when a single unscheduled call could jeopardize multi-million-dollar deals. He encourages her to just do it, arguing that even if her father does not answer, she can easily excuse it as him being busy, which is the perfect cover for someone who claims to understand others without words. She stands up, resolutely pointing a finger at him and declaring that she will not let her family name be tarnished by backing down from his challenge. She smiles with determination, stating that she will play along with his little game. When he mockingly asks if she is truly a coward after all, she angrily tells him to prepare himself, because she is going to make him regret his words immediately. With her heart racing, she takes a deep breath and presses the dial button on her screen to call her father. After a few tense rings, she gulps nervously as her father's deep voice finally answers the call, asking what is wrong. Startled that he actually picked up her call, she nervously stammers and frantically asks if he is really there. Seeing her successfully connect, he clutches his hand and smiles gently, feeling incredibly relieved. She apologizes for calling out of the blue, to which her father admits it was quite a surprise, and asks her why she called, leaving her stammering for words while he nods encouragingly from the side. Squeezing her eyes shut in intense embarrassment, she finally gathers her courage and asks her father if he truly loves her. Her father bluntly asks if that is all she wanted to inquire, a cold response that strikes her like a physical blow and makes her immediately apologize in despair. Just as she is about to sink into despair, her father calmly adds that, of course, he loves his daughter, leaving her completely stunned. She utters a confused sound of disbelief, prompting her father to assume the connection is bad as he loudly barks orders to his staff to immediately fix the building signal. With tears of joy welling up in her eyes, she asks him once more through her tears if he truly does love her. Her father warmly reiterates that, of course, a parent loves his daughter, immediately panicking in concern when he hears her crying. Hearing her tears, her father immediately bellows at his secretary to cancel all of his upcoming appointments and put his busy business meetings on hold, leaving her crying in absolute happiness. She lets out a warm, happy laugh through her tears and softly tells her father that he is overreacting. Smiling brightly, she finally hangs up the phone and turns back to face him. She admits that her past loneliness was merely a misunderstanding on her part, caused by the overly formal nature of their rare dinners together. She notes that because her father is the president of a massive group, work always had to come first, while he gently observes that she finally realized his true feelings during their conversation. She feels a wave of immense relief, realizing that her father truly does love her, and is simply an awkward man who struggles to express his feelings. She reflects on how she previously let her fear of rejection hold her back, realizing that all it took to discover his love was the simple courage to ask just once. He smiles and gently teases her, pointing out that her father seems to be just as clumsy at expressing his feelings as she is. She blushes intensely when he teasingly asks who it was that had been harboring unexpressed feelings for Yuichi all this time. She pouts and defensively argues that the lack of progress is entirely due to Yuichi being too dense, which coaxes a happy chuckle from him. She counters by telling him that he also possesses a rather difficult personality himself, though he cheerfully accepts her observation as a compliment. When he points out that Yuichi and Shiho are currently heading toward the legend-shrouded light display, and asks what her next move will be, she responds that her choice is completely obvious. With her classic confidence fully restored, she proudly places her hand on her hip and declares that she is going to stop them because she is the only one who deserves Yuichi, much to his satisfaction. As she walks away, she offers him a warm, charming thank you while he watches her depart, and thinks that this confident person is the Kaori Tajoin he always admired. She offers him a graceful parting smile, vowing that she will find a way to repay this massive favor someday. He stands quietly and watches as she confidently strides back into the amusement park. He is suddenly startled to find Sei standing nearby, staring in his direction with a quiet, pensive expression. She looks at him with a soft, gentle smile playing on her lips, her cheeks slightly flushed. Kaori suddenly sneaks up behind Sei and taps her shoulder to whisper that she has a wonderful boyfriend, throwing her into an immediate blushing panic. Sei frantically shouts back that he is not her boyfriend yet, while Kaori simply walks away with a playful wave. He nervously approaches a deeply embarrassed and fuming Sei, tentatively calling out her name. When she asks why he is there, he frantically bows and apologizes, but she gently tells him there is no need to apologize since she could never abandon him after seeing the desperate look on his face. She reasons that he must have had an incredibly important reason for running off, telling him that everything is fine and that they should resume their walk. Extending her open hand toward him with a warm smile, she suggests that they go check on how Shijimoto and Shiho are doing.